Hey, it's Joe West
Mike Shimshack,
and this is From the West Barn, our podcast. All things creative for creators, lifestyle podcast. I'm trying to figure out what it is, but it's all the stuff you'd want to talk about if you were hanging out with your friends and you're in the business of creating. Today we got canceled on, but as luck would have it, we have a Grammy-nominated producer, mixer,
how we roll.
Just strolling through the studio. So we're lucky to have Ron Petroff here.
A.K.A. Crush Audio.
What's up, guys?
Mighty Ron Petroff.
Yeah, so we've got a bunch of things we want to talk about. You know, the stuff sometimes when you have a planned guest, like we had the senator on, you're like, you have a bullet list, all this stuff that you feel like you want to get to, but it's like, it's also cool. I like listening to podcasts where they're just talking with the people they hang out with, and Ron's one of the guys we hang out with. He was scheduled to come over and smoke a cigar with me today after this to talk about some stuff.
That's still on, right?
Still
doing that.
I wish we could smoke in here.
Yes.
You can.
So awesome.
You're burned.
Could we?
Oh, we can't? We can't smoke
I need to get one of those air evacuators or what, air exchangers.
Right.
So we're going to be talking about a lot of stuff today, but first and foremost, Ron Petroff, such a great story and one of my favorite stories. You know, everybody loves the movie Rudy. Everybody loves these movies where it's like you're cheering for the underdog, right? And Ron kind of has had this storied lifestyle, you know, and I knew Ron, we went to elementary school together.
It's incredible, right?
On Ridge Road Elementary School in Ambridge, Pennsylvania.
Elementary.
Yeah.
Where Mr. Burgandy used to throw passes in the
yes.
the little courtyard there to us, and
we had this, you know, regular childhood. I used to go over to Ron's house, and you know, we'd hang out.
Vice versa.
He had a split ranch. You know, I rode my banana seat Huffy
Zender
up there.
Road. It's the Zender Road crew.
I mean, it was just like, it's so odd to look back and see your friends like that. And he was also like a fan, like one of like the top musicians at our school, and ended up going off and having a career as a saxophone player, and you know, eventually transitioned out of that. But it was like this out of a little town, like a little steel town that we came from. It was just odd. So when you found somebody who was a musician, you kind of
that was a surprise in and of itself, because it just wasn't a common thing where we came from. Like, that wasn't something. Sports was the business of the day in Western.
Oh, yeah.
PA.
I mean, if you could throw a football, or if you're over 300 pounds, and you were going to be a big star on Friday night.
Absolutely.
And we were usually hanging out in the band seats or walking around eating pizza behind
with my little plume on and my marching band cap and directing the...
But where are those guys now?
Yeah, exactly. Telling stories about, back in the football days, the glory days of high school. Yeah. But it is super cool to reminisce. And... what's also cool about where we grew up, I don't know, it seems to be a little unique as I get older and talk with other people. It's like, I am friends with a lot of the guys that we grew up with. I mean, friends in the sense that when we see each other, when we come across each other, we pick up like we just, we talked a day ago, and I think it's that area that has that kind of mystique.
Those people put a lot of stock in relationships.
For sure.
I only went to the high school. I had gone to a Christian school.
Correct. Yeah.
But I was asked to take a term of a sabbatical, let's call it, from the Christian school. So I went to Ambridge for a year and got to hang out. And I know a lot of the same people but I wasn't as plugged in as you were. I got to play the talent show with Mr. Ron Petroff, where he was featured. We did a David Sanborn tune.
Yeah, we did.
And a Glass Tiger song.
Yeah. The Dream. And a Glass Tiger song.
Don't forget me when I'm gone.
There you go. We were killing it up there.
Come on, people.
Yeah, bring it.
It's so much fun.
It's so much fun to like look back on that. It's unfortunately for me so many years ago.
Well, you know what's great is like the way we're laughing and smiling about our relationship with music back then.
Yeah.
It's like, that's the thing I try to keep on my radar, because I've got a lot of friends who've gotten immersed in the music business and have lost sort of their love for it. Yeah. So like, I try to make sure that when I'm doing records and I'm looking like what is going to be happening with me creatively in the next 12 months, 6 months, 3 months, I'm making sure that those are records that I can identify the original reason why I got into the music business. Because there's plenty. We were talking earlier before we were on camera. We were talking about all these scenarios where you could have gone and had a whole career as for me as a hip hop producer and engineer,
right?
And it's like you made the decision because it didn't feel like why I got into the music business,
right? you were dipping your toes in that world, several different worlds.
And it's tempting because it's like, oh, there's all this opportunity, so tough to come by, and you see like, oh, I could maybe go and have a lucrative career doing this, or there seems like there's tons of opportunity, but don't mistake that with why you were called into doing it in the first place, because you'll end up being miserable.
True. And it's easy to get jaded. I mean, I've gone through several different, phases of my career as a creative, you know what I mean? Like, started as an artist, playing the horn. So I've sort of experienced the music business on several different levels, but I have caught myself recently having to remind myself about the fact that I love music, and that's why I got into this. We talk about this all the time. I can't really do anything else, number one. Number two, I just wake up in the middle of the night thinking about it. I'm on my phone looking how to get better, you know what I mean? Anything associated with music, I love. I have to remember that instead of getting jaded about, I have a timeline on this project, or I don't particularly love working with this kind of genre, or, whatever the minutiae is.
Let me tell you why you're a winner. And people send me, I just got a Facebook Messenger text this week about, how do I get my songs heard? Will you listen to my songs? And would you pitch it to this person for me? And how do I get my music heard in Nashville? And once I told them how to do it, it was like, oh, the man. There was this, it sounds like an all who you know business. And that was the end I heard from the guy. But then there's Ron Petroff, right? Ron Petroff, who 2.5 years ago didn't own a Macintosh computer.
No.
We talked on the telephone. We'll talk about how we got reacquainted later in life.
Okay.
But I said, hey man, why don't you look into the iMac and look into you should have Pro Tools. It's all records. One formation of their life or another are going to make their way in and out of Pro Tools and probably end up in Pro Tools. And this is get going on this.
Right.
He buys it, and not only does he know more about Mac OS, Pro Tools, Logic, FL Studio, Studio One,
Ableton,
yeah,
Machine,
and it's like it's only been. You had that skill set maybe in 12 months, right?
It's crazy.
Some people go to school and not be proficient at it. That's the difference. That's what it takes to make it in the music business. Not to say, hey, it's an upside down world. I'll never survive. It's a rigged game. I'm just a little guy and, what was me, right?
Right.
It takes guys. That's the difference. The number one difference between people that I know that are going to be successful in the music business and people that are going to end up having the same conversation with me 5 years later is that muscle. And I can't put that muscle in people.
No, with Ron, there is no other outcome. Winning
He's got more hustle.
More hustle than anybody I may have ever met.
Grit, whatever you want to call that.
Yeah,
man, I want to get up and
the work ethic.
I'm feeling.
No, but you do.
Better open up that door to get me through there out of here today.
You do though. You wake up
that.
and you get after it. I'll call you at night and you're still going, man. I mean, you're a dude that starts at 7:00 in the morning doing this. I'm
for sure.
So I was on a podcast recently talking about the film, and the guy was saying to me, like, I tell people it's work. You got to work. And I said, it's not work. If you go and do it when you're done with what you think is work, if whatever you gravitate towards, if you end up walking by your room and going in there and then next thing you know, it's 6 hours later, you're working on a song, that's not work.
No.
And I think we misinform these kids, like when we go talk to them, it's not work.
Right.
It's the only thing you want to do.
Exactly. And I don't want to give the impression also that like I just grind staring at my machine and my keys and whatever project I'm working on for a long periods of time and don't do anything else. I've tried to work smarter, not harder, which is cliche for a reason, you know what I mean? And prioritize what's going to take most of my mental energy. Maybe the shit I don't want to do. Better get at that in the morning when I'm having my coffee and I'm like most focused. I do a little live cook up every night where I'm just sharing what I'm doing, creatively at the end of the evening, because first of all, everybody's home from work. Hopefully there are more people that will tune in, but also just as a release, I know that doesn't take for me at this point a whole lot of, I could just sort of immerse myself creatively into that. But I guess the point is I'm just trying to work in periods and sections on different things. Maybe it's rollout for an artist. Maybe it's marketing for the Apprentice Academy. Maybe it's something for Crush Audio or for Ron. You know what I mean? So
I feel like one of the things that you exemplify, maybe more than anybody I know, is follow through. Ron did a 90-day beat making challenge. 90 days. 90 days is a lot of beats. You don't think you realize how much time that is. I was blown away, and he followed through. He did 90 days. Like, and I remember seeing it show up my timeline like 45 days. I
remember this.
Holy crap, man! He's only halfway there.
Yeah.
I started noticing around 4 or 5. I'm like, it's coming down to.
But I will also say this: that's the kind of thing that on the other end of the 90 days, you're an entirely different producer.
I was,
man. Those are push-ups.
Yeah. Those are push-ups.
And the beat cook-up that you do every night, you're the dude that will stay doing that every night.
And what Joe talked about earlier, I think people who are going to be on the path to success, who are successful already, are going to have that muscle where they're compelled. I was compelled to finish that. I could not stop at 80 days or at 45 and be like, look, people, you know what I mean? I put in 45 of them for you, but I got other shit going on. You know what I mean? I was obligated.
You really are the consequences of your actions.
Correct.
If you lay around every day and don't get out of bed, there's a consequence to that.
We talk about this.
Right.
We have that in us.
Well, you know,
I
in
have
Gabe
that
Adams,
gene that you do. We all do.
The Limitless film. It was
no idea what you're talking about.
When we were talking about Gabe was born without arms or legs, we shot the documentary Limitless.
Right.
You could check it out on YouTube. Limitless, LIMBITLESS. There's a hyphen in there after the B. And then adventure songwriting. Tell this story about this guy that's born without arms or legs. And what I was captivated by him was just like he had this undeniable drive. And there's a part at the end of that documentary where I say part of the consequence of hanging around inspired people is being inspired. You know, it's like, so I find that, okay, we're artists. We always have that tendency to be riding these waves up and crashing down. There's not a lot of this. There's a lot of this, right? So it's like we need to surround ourselves with people that also inspire us. And whenever I see Ron's timeline, I'm like, oh man, I got to step it up, you know?
I feel lazy when I see Ron's timeline.
And the other consequence was, so I essentially bring Ron to Nashville. Or was a part of Ron moving to Nashville.
He was, yes.
So,
of course,
Ron has completely and utterly taken my place in my peer group. Okay. So I've got this really great group of hustling dudes that I just love hanging out with, and I respect all of them. I'm like, like when you're on a sailboat and you're drifting out to sea. I'm the guy on the shore, and Ron is like,
that's not true.
Like, it's not true at all.
Completely has taken my spot. All my friends call me like, man, Ron's such a hustler. I was like, yeah, I know. I get it.
Yeah, I get it.
Shut up already.
Stop rubbing it in. Let me tell you something. I mean, it goes without saying, but since we're on the podcast, I say this all the time, but these guys right here are the reason that, you know, that I also feel compelled to make people proud of me, and I hate when I let people down. You know what I mean? Like if we have a connection and you're part of, I'm lucky enough to be a part of a circle that I find to be highly creative, highly special people. You know what I mean? Like you don't want to let them down, and you feel compelled to work for them in order to make them proud.
And keep up with them.
Yeah, and keep up with them, right?
Right, so if you surround yourselves with a bunch of people...
I've started behind the 8 ball to catch up to these guys. I got a lot of catching up to do.
No, you had. I think you're there.
I think that's part of it. You always just want to keep on, you know, there's always, you reach a goal and then there's another goal. You know what I mean? Other than that, there's complacency and you're just sitting at
How long is it, if you hang out with a bunch of dudes who are slam dunking basketballs,
right,
how long is it before you're attempting and succeeding at slam dunking basketball? So it's like, I think as a creator, it's 100%. Super important to find people that inspire you and challenge you and that you want to reach that level. Don't be intimidated by them, and then try to work your way into that creative circle. Try to find it.
It's huge.
I want to talk a little bit about your backstory.
Yeah.
But this is actually a good segue to talk about this. This post came up on Facebook, and I was like, man, we got to talk about this on the cast. So Finneas O'Connell, you know, the brother of Billie Eilish, put this tweet out, and the whole internet sort of downloaded on him. And in his tweet, let me find it here. He said, let me see here. Shooting your shot is promoted widely, and I think honestly, it's a little overrated. Work super hard alone or with your closest friends. Make shit so good it speaks for itself. Don't pester people to work with you. Let them come to you. AKA your big break is just hunkering down and doing something that's worthy of finding, like Kurt Cobain and Nirvana changed the way people listen to music in 1992. So did the Beatles, right? We have all these paradigm shifts. So did the Billie Eilish record,
right?
You know, and it's like the response from the internet was he was speaking from a point of personal privilege, that he was, cisgendered male that had these, parents that were funding him. And if I had that, the whole internet's sort of cast down on him as to why he was successful, missed his entire point of that. And as a creator going through my life and seeing the ups and downs, I thought to myself, these people, they just don't, these are the people that are never going to get it. They're the person that texted me last week and said, I guess it's a rigged system.
You're always going to get that when you're that successful. There's just going to be people tearing you down. That guy, if you've looked at his rig setup, I think it's Logic. I think he has two like little Yamaha speakers that might be $300 or something.
Right.
Like little bedroom, like
the
bookshelf speakers.
Traditional home studio
and
setup, right?
He has like a $200 or $300
But
Audio-Technica mic.
This is what I tell people.
As folks sleep in the bedroom of their house, in
the living room.
Yeah, I think people misunderstand when they understand the parents are actors. If you've ever been to L.A.,
it's not Brad Pitt and
no, 99.99% of the people do not succeed as actors. They're just maybe working actors.
To your point,
so I think that's what his folks
I tell people all the time that people will never see your studio on the cover of the record. So if you can cut a record that sounds right and that is right, then it's a great record. Yeah. So, I tell the story a lot about how I had the opportunity to work on Bop, the Hanson single, and we had done the Hot 100 version of that when it blew up really big, the pop version we did. And I was sitting there behind an SSL, had two Studer 827s, had a Studer 820, had Lexicon 480Ls, 300Ls, 224s, everything you ever wanted. And at the end of the day, whenever I hit the space bar and listened to my mix versus the mix that came off the record that was sent to me, it just wasn't good enough. And I had looked back to all those times I had said, if I only had an SSL, if I only had this compressor or that. And then I realized after 10 years of being in New York City at this point, how hard I'd been working, that I just wasn't good enough. And I was on the right track, but I just had to do more push-ups. And over the next 15 years, I did those push-ups, and people started to come to me for those opportunities. But I would have never got there had I not taken the accountability and said, you know what, it's not good enough.
The longer I'm in the music business, the more that resonates with me from that particular tweet is the part where he says, make the music so good it can't be denied.
Right.
And
I've heard you say that
but it's true.
Times.
It's true. When it's that good, it will find its way. It sounds cliche, but it's 100%
And let's say it doesn't. How many times, if you're making great records, how many times can they ignore you?
Right.
It's not, do it for the love of doing it, number one. And then it's like, just keep doing it. Operate at an incredibly high level.
It's the war of attrition.
It's never that nobody likes anyone. When I had hits, and people said, oh, you're on the inside now? And I said, I feel like I'm in the inside of a fishbowl, and all the pressure is pushing me out the crack that I came in.
Right.
They don't want nobody wants an inside track or thinks like, oh, I'm just going to dump all my opportunity onto Ron here.
Right. It doesn't work that way.
That's 1/10 of 1/1000th of 1%, where there's lucky losers that are no good that get success.
Well, it goes with, it's for me, it's the same with Taylor Swift, right? Is that everyone says, her dad bought her. You don't get to be playing stadiums unless you have that level of talent. You just don't. I don't care what
you're either compelling from an artist standpoint,
right,
or music standpoint, or production standpoint, or an engineering standpoint, or a writer standpoint, or you're not.
Well, we've all worked with people that come from way more money than Taylor Swift has ever thought of having.
Yep.
Right.
They come from more money than she has now. And you can't make people care.
Tell me this: when you're walking down the mall and you're going out to your car in the parking lot, and there's a $100 bill laying on the ground, do you walk over it? How many times out of 10 do you walk past the $100 bill?
Zero.
Zero.
Your music should be $100 bills. is what I'm saying. Just keep dropping $100 bills, man.
Yeah.
That's a great analogy, baby.
They cannot ignore greatness for too long. And, it's like that's why we surround ourselves with a peer group, because there's support there. And whenever one of our friends starts to have hits, we don't get mad at them and say they don't deserve it. We're there at their number one parties because we celebrate it, because we know we're close to that. It's going to happen for us.
Is there something to the fact that there is privilege if you have two really talented people next to each other? Somebody with privilege may get the advantage. I don't think you can debate that idea. But to take it to that highest level of Billie Eilish, that he's a straight up genius producer. If you produce records and you sit between your monitors and you listen to that stuff, that production's stunning. The songs are incredible. The mixes are amazing. It's unbelievable. It's stunning music. It's not surprising at all that it's that successful to me.
Yeah.
It's not.
It's not. No.
Well, and don't let it get to the point where it demoralizes you. You can get down and say, man, I wish I had a little bit more opportunity or a little bit more to show for the hard work I've put in. But keep in mind, when it comes like a waterfall, and you get too much of it, and then you'll get not enough for a couple years and then too much of it. So it's never going to be the way you want it. But it's like, don't take that moment and then say, it's not worth me getting up and going behind the computer keyboard and making the record today. Don't let it stop you from doing that.
Right.
I feel like the amount of energy it takes to complain about it, if you just sat down and just worked.
Exactly.
Ron is a perfect example.
True.
I never hear Ron complain. Ron just gets to it and just grinds. And I've heard in the last, say, year and a half, the progression of your productions and the speed at which you're able to reach that result is unbelievable to me. So fast, I've been in a studio watching Ron, and it's just like, it's staggering. All the drum sounds are immediately the right sounds. Everything is right. And it just comes from the hours.
And a perfect example of like what you just referenced there. I mean, in no way comparing myself to that, but just that goal of wanting to be great. Yeah. You can compare that. Yeah. You know what I mean? Because that's something I talk about it. Like Joe talks about this all the time, and that's where I learned it. It's like, lean into what makes you. I have an incredible drive for whatever reason. Even at this age, it's because I love music. I'm not, I'm smart enough to recognize that, but still, to be able to get after it every day, it's because you love what you're doing, and don't apologize for that. Go after it.
Can you go backwards a little bit? What makes your story that much more compelling to me is knowing where you came from and some of the downsides.
I'm gonna go.
I think it's important, but I also think that's part of your drive.
Yeah, it is. All right, so Joe referenced I was a saxophone player, so everybody goes through things in their life where they get smacked down, and you have to make a decision. I have something called dystonia, which is basically writer's cramp, only around my embouchure, which is for saxophone players and woodwind players. You know what I mean? It's this area right here. I was getting these twitches. I'm playing on big gigs. I just graduated from University of Miami, big shot, you know what I mean? Gonna go play all these cruise ship gigs, club dates, tours, whatever. And I'm doing these gigs and I'm having a problem playing. So I go to all kind of doctors. I get diagnosed with this thing. Long story short, they tell me you're not playing anymore. Not at the level you were. We don't know enough about this. It's a neurological thing, blah, blah, blah. So I start to reteach myself how to play piano. Never had a formal piano lesson, but I can remember my kid's mom coming in the room and I'm playing Mary Had a Little Lamb, trying to learn how to put my fingers in the right direction, and 3, 2, 1 and 1, 2, 3, and she's laughing, you know what I mean? Like, and I was so pissed, you know what I mean? And I'm like, I'm gonna learn this because I know the theory. So I applied myself and I went. I'm no stunning piano player, but I can get around now. I sort of went through this period where I had to start all over again, having the musical knowledge, but not having any kind of technique. So, you know, I went through many years where I just was disenfranchised with music, you know, and as a result, got into some really nasty shit. And, it's been 5 years. It was just 5 years yesterday that I've been clean.
That's amazing.
So, it
seems so soon.
Like that
I
depression.
thought it was longer than that even.
Yeah. Well, I was trying for about 7.
Varying degrees of success.
Varying degrees of success and then failure. If you're in recovery, you know what that's all about. But that whole process, I don't know. You hear people who go through things and they say, I wouldn't take it away. Wouldn't take it away because it did. It something clicked in me. Wanting to be right for my kids, knowing that I remember being in rehab the second time, and this guy's looking at me. He's looking at my paperwork. He's like, "You have a fucking master's degree in music." I was like, "Yeah." He was like, "And you do dope 7 days a week. Like, do you see a problem with that?" He's like, "You're probably one of the most articulate people that's come through here. And you're wasting your life." I get choked up.
Sure.
You know what I mean? So I'm like, I got to get back to me. And by the way, when this was all happening and I was devolving into my addiction, I had gotten out of music and I was running a company that was making millions of dollars a year, a medical company, go figure, right? But, devolving into addiction. Because I had a ton of money. Never had money in my life. Long story short, that whole thing was like this cathartic moment in my life. And I made a decision to just get back to what I loved. I almost got stripped down. You hear about rock bottom. I had nothing. All I had was my home and my kids who were really not really sure about their dad right now. And the musical degrees that I had earned, which, that and $5 will buy you a cup of coffee. So I reached out to this guy, I came across him on Facebook, and we started talking. And that's where the story connects with the iMac and buying the computer. And what he didn't tell you is he was so gracious with his time. He would, I'd send him a thumb drive. He'd send me a thumb drive of all these sessions that were recorded in this place, and I'd mix them, and they'd sound horrible, and I'd send them back to him, and he'd tell me I did a good job, and he'd be like,
they were good.
Yeah, they were okay, you know what I mean? And more importantly, he took the time, and when he offered for me, then out of nowhere, this guy's offering for me to come down and hang out, and that's where I met this guy, and that guy over there. It's like, you can't, somebody bigger than me was telling me, go here. And that's what I did.
This brings me to a good question. How much do you feel your move of leaving Pennsylvania and coming to Nashville impacted your imminent success?
Get ready. People in recovery are going to go nuts. But, it was a huge, significant thing for me. They'll tell you, don't try and run away from your problems because they'll just keep following you. You know what I mean? There are drugs in Nashville. Surprise, it's Music City. You know what I mean? There are some people dabbling in some stuff. So changing your location sometimes doesn't work. For me, getting around back to my roots, so to speak. You know what I mean? Meeting with somebody that I knew was a solid dude. I hadn't talked to him or seen him in 20-some years, but I knew. And then when you meet guys that you just feel connected with, similar age, same goals, you respect what they've done personally, professionally, it was a no-brainer for me.
That's my favorite part of Nashville. It's a really nice city to live in. I like living here, but I love that, the person taking your order at the restaurant is probably a songwriter. I love that.
Yeah.
I love that the music dream is here.
It's another addiction too. So it's like,
True.
I would say that I'm an addict. I have that muscle in me that is like, if it's worth doing, it's worth overdoing.
Correct.
Hey, if you cook a turkey in 8 hours at 300, why not put it at 1,000 and cook it in 2 hours? Right? That's kind of how I'm wired. But for you, I think it was a good substitute, right? It's like, okay, you've got this purpose now. You see the music, and through failing in life, you now have assessed value to it and say, this is actually a valuable thing. I don't want to mess it up. I don't want to fail it.
Right.
It's my rope out of this ditch.
It is.
And you use that same addict muscle, and you've
Absolutely.
now all that is directed into purpose.
Talk about it with friends all the time. There's something incredibly powerful. Okay, when you wake up in the morning at 6 o'clock in the morning, and you can't get out of the bathroom, and you're dope sick, right? You're the flu times 10, and you find a way with $0, no gas in your tank, to score a couple $100. And by the end of the day, there's one thing I can guarantee you: I was going to be feeling better than I was feeling that morning. That was my only focus. So you're right. When you apply that to something positive, some people get into exercise. Some people go into their diet. They get incredibly honed in on whatever hobby it is they have outside of their career. For me, logical thing was music, and I love it. And I just had lost that. So 100%.
So tell us, you were working at the Comfort Inn.
I was working.
You were working the desk at the Comfort Inn.
Yeah.
How long from the desk at the Comfort Inn to being nominated for a Grammy?
That's a good question. It was.
Came down. You went to the Apprentice Academy.
I came down. I went to the Apprentice Academy.
You started
I spent 4
woodshedding?
months here. Started woodshedding. It was a year after. So it was 2 years.
2 years.
2 years.
Talk about the difference.
That's incredible.
In what you're able to do to get yourself out of a bad situation, and get a whole new perspective on life. I love the story. I mean, that's why I talk about it feeling like a Rudy story. It's like, who doesn't want that guy to win? And it's like, I look at that and I say to myself, it's like, I'm happy for you and I get to live all your successes. But above and beyond that, it's like, I'm inspired by it. And I'm like, I want to do more. I want to make sure that I'm as acquainted with my fire as you are to your fire.
That's what's unique about this group of people. You know what I mean? And it doesn't mean we have to talk every day or anything like that. But when you see someone in your quote unquote circle or your friendly circle doing something amazing, it's inspiring. And you want to match that. It helps you. You
wouldn't even think to do it without everyone else doing it around you. It's just such a high level of people doing whatever art it is that they do, whether they be a session player or audio engineer or a producer. When you're around those people, it's like we just did a full-blown tracking dates here last week. Ron was engineering, I was producing. And when you leave a session, it's like almost like you feel like, oh, we just went to see Cirque du Soleil. It was such an extraordinary thing in those 3 hours, what was captured and what was accomplished. And it was only done like a trapeze work where people were literally swinging into other people's arms, the timing and and to be a part of that. It isn't like, oh, I want to be so good that I'm great. It's like, I want to be so good that I can keep up and be a necessary part of those great moments. I don't know that any of us are great enough. We maybe been associated with some great things that rang the bell, but it's like to be great enough to be in a room where it isn't just you being a genius. In the room, one out of 1,000 times you can be swing and knock one out of the park. But it's like being capable to be around the people that environment is going to be created, and you're going to be able to have a high probability for balls to be going out of the park and just say, hey, I'm a necessary part of it.
That's where greatness lives. Yeah. Right there.
Elusive.
Absolutely.
It's great. And it's great if, at my age, that I'm still chasing it and that you all are still on fire about it. Most people are thinking about like how they're going to retire at this age, and we're thinking about what the next thing we can do is.
The next thing.
So, I mean, that's a beautiful part of it.
So let's talk about the Apprentice Academy for a second.
Sure.
Which is Joe's school.
Absolutely.
I know you moved down here to attend the semester of the Apprentice Academy.
I did.
What did you learn at the Apprentice Academy that you think you would not have learned had you not gone? This is to understand the Apprentice Academy. For those that don't know, Joe goes into deep depths of like, I've been doing this forever, and I'm just starting to learn what attack and release does on the compressor. I mean, really, like
the goal is that we make them incredibly competent. So whenever they leave it, they're capable of doing a full-blown tracking date with all the signal processing, being able to get world class.
You throw these
sounds
guys
and
into
everything.
the deep end.
They go into the deep end, and there's a ton of support for them, but it's very hands on. It's like teach a man to fish, give a man a fish. But I'd say even more than the technical prowess that we try to get these guys up to is how do you be successful in a field that's really difficult to be successful in? And there's a social side to that. There's a business logistical side. How am I going to plan? How am I most effective? How can I fit into a room? How do I make sure that people want me back in that room the next time they're in there?
Right.
I love that you talk about the intangibles because, understanding a compressor is important. Understanding, gain staging is all important. But the idea that you impart to them, you got to be a good hang. I don't care how good you are. If you're not a good hang, if you're not a good hang, it's a wrap. Especially in this city, it's a wrap.
It's a wrap. Over. And that you asked me, the intangibles. Of course I learned how to do things. I was working in a home studio in my basement, so I was basically recording either one at a time, mostly vocal cuts, stuff like that. So I came specifically with the goal of a live recording session and all that entailed, guitar cabinets, miking, drum kits, you know what I mean, getting sounds in a room, the whole logistical process of live recording. And I did get all that, but really the special part and the thing that was unexpected was stuff like, it's all about the hang. That sounds silly. Go ahead and fuck that up. And see if, see if these people want to hang out with you again. You know what I mean? Like, you'll see real quick how important that hang is.
There's too much talent here.
There is. It's like,
there's too much talent. People will move on to the next one. And they might, I would argue that you might even go on to somebody that's not as talented, but it's a better hang.
Right.
Because really, we're
for sure. Yeah,
we're recording energy into tracks. And if the vibe is wrong in the studio, it translates to the music.
Well, I never thought that Ron was going to be such a well-rounded engineer. I thought he was going to take these skills and apply them to the technology that he uses, which is mostly in the box, and do that. Yeah. Because I guarantee you, if you learn how to do all this railroad recording, and we have a bunch of stuff about technology as well, but you're going to be better sitting alone behind your monitor programming drums.
Things as simple as signal flow, you know what I mean? And understanding that at a basic level and then building from there. That's how problem solving is done when you are sitting in that environment and you're like, how am I going to make this
command and comprehension?
Right.
It's like when you see something. We were just talking about a story where I was an engineer in Pittsburgh, and there was a session going on, and the artist was in jail. It was a rough and tough record.
I remember this.
And they were I was the chief engineer of this multi-room facility, and the engineer came to me and said, man, we just can't get it done. Every time we call this guy, he's got 10 minutes on the phone, and he raps in, and we send him the track, and by the time it comes back, all the compression from the phone line, we just can't put it into the mix. There's too much track, and I don't think we can do it. And so we brainstormed overnight, and we got the next day when he had his 10 minutes on the phone, I called him, and I'm like, hey, man, are you standing at a bank of telephones? And he was like, yeah, man. I'm like, give me the phone number for the telephone to your left. So we called him, and this telephone lines have nothing to do with pro audio, but they have everything to do with it if you understand signal flow. So we sent an isolated track. So dude's standing at a bank of telephones in the jail. He's got one telephone that we dialed into and put the track, which he has held the receiver this way, and the speaking part is facing up towards the ceiling. And he's rapping in to his telephone on a different discrete Mon Paul Bell telephone line that comes back as a clean piece of audio. That's a good example of no one would blame you if you didn't get that accomplished.
Correct.
It's not possible. We tried it. We couldn't do it. But what I love about making records, writing songs, producing, making films is that what if we do find a way to get it done?
Right.
And then it's you get to bask. That story's 25 years old. And it still makes me feel really good that we did something that we weren't supposed to do. And it comes from comprehending and understanding. And once you comprehend and understand as a songwriter, as a record producer, you can break all the rules. Right. Because you see it from 10,000 feet above as well as atomically at an atomic level. You can see it at 360 degrees. You can say, okay, it's square. It's a square ball and it's a round hole. But maybe if we squeeze the ball enough, we could get it into the square hole. You can break the rules.
Right.
Which then you get really extraordinary outcomes, or at least the opportunity for them. And, I love people that think that way. I love to be a part of that, because it's just like anything is possible.
Well, and we've been really lucky from that first Apprentice Academy class. What are we going on now?
4th year.
Okay. It's just an incredible group of people each year that have, the majority of them, gone on to sort of find their way. You know what I mean? But they keep coming back to home base and touching in, which is amazing about that kind of alumni.
The confidence of knowing that or at least you have,
right.
I think Joe and I have worked with a lot of young kids that come out of some of these schools, and they have no idea how it works. None, and, that's not what the Apprentice Academy is.
It's just not. Yeah.
Not to sound like an advertisement, but you learn real world stuff, and that's huge.
The other thing I love about it is, now that I've done it a couple years, there's a point that the guys attending don't know is coming, and I know it's coming because I've done 4 of them. And Ron is now teaching at the Apprentice Academy. So about halfway through, they start to root for each other.
Yeah, that's cool.
And we do stuff like if I can't do it on my schedule and someone wants me to mix a record, I'll say, hey man, rather than pitch it to other guys in town and try to get them to mix it, what if my guys did mixes, and if you chose one of them? The Casey James record we shot here, it was a live record. I did all the recording for it. I had to go to Utah to do something, and then all the guys submitted mixes, and they chose Chris Capp. Chris Capp mixed that entire record.
It's incredible.
It's incredible. It's an incredible opportunity for him, and it's like, what an
added bonus outside of all the education you're getting, to have those kind of opportunities that happen throughout the course of the program and beyond.
It's a blessing
that's
to
the
him.
other thing.
But the guys were like, hey man, send me screenshots of your 2 mix. Hey, how'd you do this? And it wasn't like, oh, my mix was better. Like what all the internet stuff. And it's like, that's a beautiful thing, because those are the beginning of relationships that not now, your people eventually will be calling you back and say, hey, these are my people. I came up with them. I got to do this thing out on the West Coast. Can you do this thing on the East Coast and send it to me? And next thing you know, you want people to win.
This whole infrastructure of people that are,
rather than being enemies in competition, you're compadres, and I love that about it.
Yeah,
it's a great thing to be a part of.
I agree.
Every year I enjoy it.
Nashville, right? Nashville's obviously known as a country music town, and it's expanding. I don't do a lot of country. I do mostly pop, and I've found that it's a great place to live and work that way. You do primarily hip hop,
right?
That's your true love, I think. Is that safe to say?
It is. That's safe to say. Hip hop. And
so, are you seeing a good emerging community, hip hop community happening in Nashville?
I am. I see things happening with their producers that have moved to town over the last few years that are known for hip hop, and that sort of has set the stage. That was an indicator for me. I'm the BeatStars ambassador. BeatStars is a platform that you could put your tracks up online and promote them, and to potential artists or other producers who may want to purchase that track and then record to it. So we had we started doing these meetups once every month, and we were doing them down in Nashville, and I started to see those growing as I was hosting them and getting connected with some people that were really talented. Plus you have it was an inevitability, in my opinion, that hip hop was going to grow. I think I came here at the right time. I did not know.
You're hearing hip hop in country music.
Sure, you are. You've been hearing trap
everywhere. It's pop music. It's modern pop music, really.
Right, with a little twist, with a little injection of country.
I have teenage daughters. Really, that's all they listen to effectively.
Right. That's why I thought it was an inevitability. I thought that as the youngsters, the 18-year-olds, 15-year-olds of today continue to grow up and become the adults of tomorrow, their experiences with music are different than ours. You know what I mean? And from what I've from what I understand, hip hop is, if not the main genre worldwide, it's up there. Yeah. And it was just natural that in a place where you had so many talented musicians, people coming from musician stock, so to speak, or music stock, they were going to start playing their music of the day and wanting to inject that in as their creative expression. So I think it's a great time for the hip hop business and just things outside of just country in the Nashville area. I think there are opportunities wider than that.
I agree.
So we've had a pretty good day today.
We have.
Great day.
We got to book more of these, like the haphazard
Speaking
ones.
of a great hang, this was not expected and very cool. So,
well, thanks for coming on, Ron. Why don't you tell people where they can find you?
Yeah, this will take another half hour. No, you can find me at www.crushaudio.com, KRUSH audio.com. Simple.
That's
short
it.
And sweet.
No Twitter.
I'm Crush Audio
bios.
everywhere right now. So Facebook page, I do a live stream Monday through Friday, 7 to 8 p.m. I would love for you to come and check that out. Central Time, CST. I'm building tracks. My catchphrase is I come to you totally unprepared in the sense that I haven't pre-made anything. So I literally start choosing sounds and going Monday through Friday, 7 to 8 p.m. Check it out.
Yeah, and you've got a beat business too, right? Is that still rocking and rolling?
CrushAudioBeats.com.
See, I told you, I knew there's more. Just have to dig a little.
You got to dig a little. That's it, though.
You can find out more about me at joe-west.com and the school we talked about today, which is ApprenticeAcademy.net.
Open house Saturday, March 14th, 3 p.m. You have to RSVP. Ads are flying around everywhere for that as well. We would love to.
Yeah, and if you want to check out the Limitless film.
Will this be out then?
I think it will be. We're about 4 or 5 weeks off the schedule.
My bad. That might be an edit point for this podcast.
But you just ruined the whole illusion of relevancy. But if you want to check out the Limitless film we talked about today too, which is a great little documentary, you can go to inspired-docs.com and check that out. And Mike Shimshack can be found where?
You know I don't have a website. We go through this every time.
I know, but it's so much fun. It's my favorite part of the show.
I know. Instagram at Shaq Jones, ShackJonz. That's it, man.
Dude, your Instagram is going to be blowing up.
No, it's not.
It's a laser focus on that Instagram.
It's not. I don't even have like the email tab that you can email me. You have to send a message and it goes into the request, which I never
James Brown's the godfather of soul, right? I mean, Mike's got to be like that. I mean, what's going on in TikTok right now with his group is insanity.
Yeah, man, we should have talked about it. We should have talked about the Brent Shuttleworth record that you're producing too, and that Mike is.
Check out Gone Girl. Will Wear. Shout out Brent.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming and hanging with us. We'll keep on doing this.
Thanks,
it sounds like a fun, like every once in a while we'll hang together.
Yeah.
And great. Thank you, Vaughn, for all your hard work.
Yeah, Vaughn.
Killing it over there.
My man.
Thanks, guys.
Hit it.
We'll see you next time on From the West Barn.